So, you've done a lot of work in yield monitors and they're a very reliable, proven technology, would you say? Yeah?
Yes.
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 Why the hesitation?
They could be. There's been a big move pushed just recently to make sure they're all. You can calibrate them internally on the harvesters, and that's having them calibrated has been a bit of an issue. People seem to think, and again, this is where I may be a bit leading a bit more to the research side than the practicality side necessarily. But if you don't calibrate it, to me, you're missing something. You're missing the ability to put it into that profit map to be able to do it in some real terms. And so people use them relatively fine, but I think the calibration part. So I'd like them to be self-calibrated.
So automation's the key to drive that.
So and now there's the push to have them now. They're coming on the market with scales built in, basically ability to calibrate.
So this is John Deere. Have you seen the yield sense system?
No.
It's got a self-calibrating bucket on the chain that comes up and over, and so it's a known volume hitting the mass flow sensor and calibrates with an RFID tag.
Perfect. And then I think we've got a better chance of getting, this uptake that's fairly low, higher. That's the problem.
On the uptake, how many farmers do you reckon are actually out there implementing these technologies or using the data?
Oh, the numbers that float around at the moment are 30%. That might be, looking at yield data, sensibly and using it for some sort of action. That might be about right. Probably still a little high. State by state.
State by state?
It's different. Yeah. WA is the highest.
Yeah, they're doing some cool stuff over there.
Yeah. So it's not enough.
Yeah.
Again, it's not enough people using this information to observe what they've done in the past, to be able to quantify their changes, because everybody is experimenting themselves, everybody's doing something. Not enough people using this tool to be able to judge properly from what it's doing. And then the next step of that is to actually make better agronomic decisions. So see whether maybe your decisions that you've made weren't that great or they were great.
Yeah, validation process.
Yeah, so it's a no-brainer to me. The next step is to move down the path of trying to convince farmers that the trials they've been doing, people have been doing lots of trials, maybe not enough of them, but the trials they've been doing are incredibly valuable for them and for their neighbours, because in a local region you're usually growing, you're growing the same varieties, you've got soil type variations going on, but you're similar. You've got experiments then going on that you can share the results of a little better. If we can build systems that use those trials with sensors that we're trying to at the moment, sensors that are commonly available, the green seekers, the crop circles, those sorts of things that are commonly available but aren't used at all really in Australia in any great sense. But they're the only ones we've got at the moment to give us in-season information under our control. To bring those things on board into the management process, you need to have trials. You wouldn't use those sensors without trials. And so I think we've got to build that philosophy in people's minds that trials are great, but to use them you need yield monitors, and we hopefully want to have some in-season sensing, and that could be replaced by the crop circles by satellite imagery. It's getting far better resolution these days, but it's still, I think, having something on your boom that you can control when you go out, the right stage, the right places. Yeah, I think that's the next step we see here. The vehicle that drives it is got to be the desire from farmers, led by, I guess, a better ability of us to show the value, and not just the value from certain farms. It's a difficult thing for us to do. That's why it hasn't been forthcoming to provide a universal value from doing this stuff. It is quite site specific, but I think the driver is to have maybe better value, us showing a better value of the data, showing that the farmers are, as you said, are already doing things that are pretty well aligned with what we're trying to do here. I don't think there's too much trouble bringing agronomists on board. I think there's again, the experimentation idea is not new to agronomists at all. So it's just upskilling But that bit of tech and the desire to spend a bit more time, as you said, there is a time cost. A time cost for all the new things we want to do in farming.
Ah.
Other parts of society we don't. We buy lots of gear that removes time problems. Farming, a lot of the steps forward require time.
And time's the biggest.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing in farming, hands down. Anyway.
Yeah. And
All right, so trials are going to be the way we drive this forward. Data is, so to you, the pooling of the data is the next low-hanging fruit?
it's pooling data.
Because that's what everyone's buzz talk, big data.
Yeah. So any farm that has collected data on the whole farm is my terms big data. That's big data. Farmers have been big data for a long time, and so if you've got a whole load of all your fields that you have data for, some form of data for, yield data, some soil data, so if you've got big data, so the issue now we're looking at is whether we can move from just using the data from one field. We've been very mindful of just trying to use data from inside a field boundary to make maps of it, to use that data to predict what's going on in that field itself, and disregarding everything else that's going on around the field. Now, usually that's been because we've all got different rotations going on. We do have soil variation and changes, and we know that it does change. But now that we do have computing power, and so for big data, to me the big data inverted commas bit is the computers really, not the data itself. It's the fact that we've now got computers that will deal with the data that we do already have in a more time efficient manner. And so we can explore whether there's value in the data surrounding a field to help predict what we might want to do or help manage the field that we're interested in with maybe less data about that field. So to help farmers who haven't collected lots of data on every field, maybe we can come up with processes that will help us get to the same sort of points where the very advanced people are now with less data specifically on the field, but as long as you've got data surrounding it. And that then lends itself to being a process that might lead to aggregations of local farmers cooperating with each other to share their data. That might help. So that's the next step, I think, to explore anyway. No, we're not saying that that's the solution, but it's something that needs to be explored. Yeah. So working in agriculture, I didn't have a background in agriculture. I'm from the city. My goal was to, at some stage, I got an idea at some stage after a while working in the commercial world that I wanted to buy up some land, and then I realised that wasn't going to happen. It was too expensive. I could buy a small parcel that wouldn't be much. So I don't come from the city. I don't come from a farm. I come from the city, and I would say to young people who are thinking about what they like to do that working in the farming community is not about just farming. Farming is a business, and everything is aimed at the business of farming. But we need in the farming community now people who are interested in engineering, people interested in data, people interested in the social side of how farming communities work together, how farmers transition between technologies, how do they take up technologies, all those things. So there's working in the farming communities now a very wide open set of skills that are needed, and nobody has all of them. And so we are in an industry that is really exciting, that requires new people to come into it who maybe aren't from farming. I think that we want people to come that have got an engineering mindset, that they would like to learn something about the biology interaction with engineering, or the social interactions, as I said, between humans and machines, humans and plants, humans and animals. Economists we need involved in it. We need a whole range of people. So I'd encourage anybody who's in any of those sorts of fields to look at agriculture as a way of practically, performing your skills, I think.